Welcome to the Nonessential Podcast.
I'm Gumph.
Gumph.
I'm Gumph, and this is Gork.
Gumph is a cooler nickname than I could ever come up with for myself, by the way.
Steve Gumph Gibson.
Yeah.
It's Gumpff.
Yeah, I like it. Gumph.
I'm Gumph. I'm an alcoholic. It all started when people called me Gumph.
That's a chicken and egg thing, really. Like, did you become an alcoholic because people were calling you Gumph, or were they calling you Gumph because you're an alcoholic and that's like what you sound like when you talk?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Like you just gave up on pronouncing Gibson when you were hammered one night. And then
it's just, sir, you're cut off. Don't you know who I am? I'm Steve Gumph.
I'm Steve Gumph. Fuck. It's Nonessential Pod, everybody. I'll do it live for all of you. My best
You know how sad
friends.
it would be to, like, drink enough to get cut off with what I drink. Be like Miller Lite and be like, you've had enough Miller Lights, Steve.
I just, like, push away the fucking person trying to do karaoke so I can do a live podcast for once. It's like my dream.
I never thought of that. That's genius.
I'm gonna get the fuck out of my way.
I'm gonna go to a karaoke night.
That's opening act.
That's a shame that we don't live closer to where we could do that. You just showed a random bar, and like you sign up for some song, and they start to play. You're like, hey DJ, because we don't need the song. Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast.
Player out. All right. Yep, hit that fade, and welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. A fucking bar.
You know what? Most like the kind of bars that I've ever been to that have had karaoke, I don't think people would notice, let alone care. They just except for the like one person that like really wanted to sing "Don't Stop Believing," like they'd be pissed.
So, me and my mom went out to dinner the other night to like this pizza sort of bar, pizzeria / bar.
Yeah,
I guess you would call it
the best kind of pizzeria, but
yeah. And we always have sat in the bar area when we go there, and like we had been saying for like months we should play pool or something, but we would never do it. And finally we started doing it, and then she was like, "We should play darts," and I've never really played darts. Like I kind of understand the goal, and the scoring, but I don't have any technique, you know?
Right. My goal when I play darts is just to hit the board.
Just get it to stick in, which was driving me fucking nuts with her, because she was getting double bullseyes, but the fucking things weren't sticking, which to me is like, that shouldn't fucking count, because that you're just throwing a fastball.
Was it one of those like plastic ones where it like has
the
to go in the hole,
pre-holes?
or was it?
Yeah. It wasn't like an old-timey needle dartboard, which is fine because it keeps score for you and stuff. But like I'm saying, you want that shit to stick. But what sucks is if you ever played darts, the goal of the game, the goal of the like kind of the general game that people tend to play is you take it down from a certain score, and by the time like you need it to hit exactly 0. So
yeah, you can't go past.
So if you have 20 points left, you have to get 20 exact points. You can't, or less. You can't go over it. So if you get like a double 20, it's a bust, and it's the other person's turn. And this fucking machine was so loud every time you busted. So we got to a point where I needed like a 4 and she needed a 3, and we fucking idiots we cannot get it. And every time we miss, the fucking thing's like, brrr, and like people are trying to eat and shit around us. And I'm just like, I'm getting those like nervous sweats. And so I'm just so embarrassed.
Hearing the random in the background, just, God damn it, boy, hit the fucking 3.
Yeah, but I'm not going to give up. Like, I'm not going to be like too embarrassed to stop trying to win. But it was like, God damn it, did they really have to put that sound in?
Yes, they did.
But I will say the next game, I think I was so trained to try to avoid that sound, I hit my score like immediately once I got down to like.
There you go. See, it's psychology coming into play.
So yeah, but darts are fun. Fun little game.
I have 0 entertaining stories from the last 2 weeks, so.
Yep. I ate pizza and I played darts. That's why we gave ourselves an extra week, so I can
eat pizza
mine that rich, that rich story vein that is real life. But yeah, if you've never heard our show before, we tend to ramble about 5 to a half an hour, and then we tell each other stories, and they're about whatever the fuck.
Yeah. Apparently it's my turn this week.
Yeah, I guess.
I knew this would happen. So, here's more background if you've never heard the show. When we first started this concept, we both brought different topics the same week. I would do the first half and you'd do the second, or vice versa. And then we're like, that's too much. We'll trade off every other week. And after about 2-3 years of that, we're like, that's too much. So now we're like, okay, you do 1 week, then we'll take a week off. And then I do. And it still is like,
that's too much.
Last night, when it was too late to do anything yesterday, but I hadn't gotten to sleep yet. I'm like, wait a minute. We record tomorrow and it's my turn. Fuck.
That's fair.
I did have an actual topic, just like you did last week. I did not write any notes out for it. So instead, you're getting a creepypasta. That is our go-to. Kind of our go-to. I considered, and I did this once or twice before, where it's like, well, I had the topic, and I got
the sources.
Yeah, and I would just try to wing it from the sources. I'm like, no, I'm way too tired for that. We've been slammed at work.
It is actually really hard to do it. I could not, as much prep as it takes to do a real topic. If you haven't heard the show, Creepypasta, we just narrate it and fucking chime in with our smart ass comments. A real topic, if you don't put it into kind of your own words and your own structure, it's just you either sound so
robotic,
fucking dry,
or you end up just reading somebody else's article verbatim, which, unlike creepypastas, which we make sure are shareable, and that's their intent, you cannot do that with random actual articles.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, maybe I'll get you my actual topic next time. But creepypasta this week. Now, I did actually take the step and read through this one instead of, because I've tried. You do it all the time, and you're like, yeah, this one sounded interesting. I read the first paragraph, and you get to the end, and we're like, wow, it's the best creepypasta we've had yet. And I'm like, I tried that. I'm like, yeah, this sounded interesting. And you get to the end, and it's like, and then I fart knuckle, and you're like, what the fuck?
And then I fart knuckle.
Right.
It's like
I do not have good luck picking.
I kind of, even if we have our beefs with the story, I usually am pretty good at picking out a premise, and then I don't want to spoil it for myself. It's not even that I have faith it'll be good. It's more just whether it's good or bad, I want it to be fresh for both of us.
And I share that sentiment, but I quit because every fucking time I try it.
But you roll snake eyes every time you fucking do this shit.
Even the ones that I read 2/3 of the way through, I'm like, yeah, that's good. And then the last third is just it shits the bed.
Yeah. It literally ends with love gump.
You're shitting the bed. Yeah, gump. Yeah.
And that's why I'm dead now. P. Frederick Gump.
This one I did read through first, so I know what I'm getting into. And I hate setting expectations beforehand. But it might be one of the best stories I've ever read in my life. Or the worst.
Okay.
Or maybe it's just a creepypasta. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not setting
the only
expectations.
thing we know for sure is that
it's got words.
There's words in it. If I can comprehend them one day, it might be the best damn thing I've ever read.
Yeah, and here's going to be the problem. I was reading through a second quick read through before we started, but I was having a glass of wine with that, and for as little as I drink anymore, just that might make it interesting. But I think I'm good. I've got water now, so we'll see. We'll see how this goes.
Yeah, the LSD was kicking in about halfway through, and I gotta say, this is the best damn thing I've ever read.
Yeah. And again, that couldn't go like the cool Hunter S. Thompson LSD writing words to page way. It would just me like
we've talked about it before, but he like wrote up like what his daily schedule was, and it was like,
fantastic.
Yeah, and it was like, you know, 5 a.m. cocaine. You know, it's like just a list of like all the drugs he does, and then like how he stops for a meal and then keeps doing drugs. And
in between each drugs, it was like a bottle of liquor.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah, he's constantly just pumping booze, and like I'm just imagining that schedule, but like in between, it's like read creepypasta. You know, I have a 7 a.m. mojito, 8 a.m. creepypasta.
I do have to admire. You've like most people in this world knew about him and his writing long before I did, and I know you were a fan. I love the stuff I've read of his. It's very good. Mm-hmm. I don't know how any human being could have kept that schedule for more than a fucking week. And honestly, he didn't survive, but he didn't die from it either. Maybe from like secondhand of it. Like I think it contributed to his.
I don't know.
Or maybe not. He was just like, this hasn't fucking killed me yet. I'm just going to do it myself.
I don't know. I would have to relearn it because I don't really remember much about his like end of life. But I think it was more like kind of the issues that people deal with in general, and like, you know, the elderly community. The like, you know, it might have been, you know, drug and alcohol problems.
I think in
general it was just like shit's hurting and I can't function the way I used to, and he got really depressed.
And as deep as he got into his because that's the thing, for all like the craziness of his writing, I mean, it wasn't just like bullshit out there. I mean, he was one of the few people really picking apart American politics and American society and the stupid path that we were on. And I think he saw that instead of like doing any good, we were still hurtling further in that shit direction, and he was just like, fuck this.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think. I don't think he would have cared, because he didn't really strike me as a dude who lived his life like worried about anything. You know, because he always had that perspective of like, you know, everything's fucked and we're all kind of just navigating the, you know, we're all on a carnival ride, and that was sort of his philosophy about it. But I do think about it sometimes, like just how fucking big he would be now. Like, you know, he was famous, obviously. By the time he died, it was like, I think it was early 2000s.
Or late 90s, early 2000s.
You know, because I remember it was some of the last shit he wrote was about George W.
Yeah, I just can't imagine if he was still around.
If he was still alive, and like, you know, I miss him. I miss that voice, because if you read his shit about Nixon, you know, it's very therapeutic when you hate a certain piece of shit in politics. And
he was very good at like taking how we feel about something like that and like putting it into words that were like, he was like, very eloquent, but it was like it was fucking biting. Like it was the equivalent of just like, if he wrote about you, it was like the literary equivalent of like having to step into a boxing ring with Mike Tyson. You know, he just peppered you with shots and then dropped you. Which is another fucking weird thing about the guy, going back to our initial, to be that, like, I guess, eloquent and insightful and just skilled at writing when you're that fucked up all the time. Like,
well, somebody, he would argue that you needed to be in order to do the job he did.
Although I've seen a lot of people that agree with that philosophy that tried it, and it's not.
They're not nearly. No. That's the thing. He would have been a great writer either way. I think, you know, the booze and the drug use and stuff was more to cope with the other parts of that job.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and plus I think a lot of us build up like these fake crutches that to us are real. You're like, oh man, I need this to, and it's really
and he wrote a lot about it too, about the mental aspect of writing. Like, like I said, he would have been a great writer either way, as far as like the words he put on paper and phrasing things. But he talked a lot about, the reality of like writer's block and fucking deadlines, and he was terrible with deadlines.
And of course but of course he also seemed like the kind that he was fortunate enough to get big enough to be like able to be like, fuck the deadline.
That was the thing. Like he would get he would have 15 magazines ask him to write a story. No, he wouldn't do the story, or he wouldn't do it the way they wanted, or he'd take so long to do it that they would be like, fuck you, we're not paying for this. And then Rolling Stone would be like, oh, it's Hunter, we'll take it.
Yeah. And it became a big hit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it would be some of the best fucking journalism ever put to page.
Anyway, this is the
episode where I just suck his cock for, an hour.
And he tells you how you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a creepypasta. This one's called Only Following Orders. I couldn't find an author, so it's probably right on the top of the page, but I didn't see the name there. The story you are about to read is one that has been, for the last 70 years, left to wither in the hearts of those few who recall it. Of the 12 of us present that day, only I remain, and my own end is rapidly approaching. I write this tale with shaky hands, solely in order to console myself in my final moments.
I hope this ends with the twist of like, wait, I'm going to be okay. Because so many of these have that, and I don't hate that ending, but so many horror stories have that, like, I'm fucked, here's why,
Right.
And that's the plot line.
I hope anybody who may discover this document will refrain from judgment upon me or my comrades until the end. So that's a funny way to put it. I thought, because it's like, don't judge us until you finish reading it, then judge all you fucking want.
Yeah, and then it's like
which is pretty solid. That's pretty solid advice for life in general. Like, just slow down, don't judge right away. Judge all you want, but not right away.
But not right away.
Give it a second.
To be fair, if I was writing this, I'd be like, judge if you want. I don't give a shit. You bought the book. I got your money before I died.
I distinctly recall sitting in a tent with my fellow soldiers outside of Berlin, huddling around a shortwave radio and listening to the trials of our nation's greatest foes.
O.J. Simpson.
He's on the turnpike still. This is starting to get kind of boring, but we put all these cameras on it, so we're going to have to keep following it. There he goes. I forget how that chase ended. Like, I think he ran out of gas, right? And they just...
I don't know. I actually don't know a lot about the OJ trial.
I was in junior high, and they had it on the TVs in the junior high for some reason.
Later in life, everything he did was like the definition of, that's not a good look. You know?
Yeah, I mean, you literally get off on a technicality for murder, and the first thing you do is write a book called, like, If I Did It. And it's like, well... Anyway. They feigned... trials of our nation's greatest foes. They feigned insanity, pled guilty, gave harrowing accounts of every detail and every single crime committed by their hand or under their watch. My favorites, however, were the ones who pled innocent, the ones who said, I was just following orders. I had to wonder what I would say had the war ended with Moscow under the Iron Eagle. What would I say if asked to justify my actions in war? I believe I know exactly what I would say, and it would be the same as men being jeered at by the entire Red Army, excluding the 10 of us gathered in the tent. You see, the two luckiest of us had already died. It was a quiet village in eastern Germany, December 24th, 1944. We were under orders to seek out any soldiers lying in wait to ambush the main column of the army. Our sergeant, Ivan, took the lead, the rest of us falling in behind him. It was raining heavily, obscuring our vision. A sharp crack jerked me to attention. I always love that choice of words there. Jerked me off to attention. It's a sharp crack. And I immediately fell to my stomach. I smelled smoke, and I heard a thump in the dirt a dozen feet ahead of me. The sound of gunfire roared in my ears as we returned fire. We had no idea where the shot had come from, so each among us took our best guess and fired in that direction. Best thing to do. I think that's the first thing they teach you in firearms is if you're not sure, just shoot somewhere. Like, anywhere. We knew we would not hit the shooter, but we had hoped to scare him off. I decided to hold my fire in order to cover my comrades as they reloaded their weapons. When the gunfire stopped, I watched carefully the nearby houses.
Right, he held his fire to cover?
Yeah, basically, so, like, he didn't want everybody to run out of ammo and have to change magazines at the same time. Like, almost like the old, Civil War tactic where, like, the front line would fire and then while they're reloading, the back line would fire.
Okay, but I thought it said they were reloading, so he was like, well, I'm going to just wait until they're ready to go. It's not fair.
No, he meant his comrades. Although I do like this idea, too, that it's like, well, I decided, it's like you really should decide to follow however you were trained. You don't tend to just make the rules of engagement up as you go, random soldier, but whatever. It was smart.
Maybe you don't. But he played Call of Duty.
That's true. When the gunfire stopped, I watched carefully the nearby houses. A quick movement by a roadside fence caught my eye, and I quickly shot off a couple rounds at the dark mass. At least one of my shots must have landed, because whatever it was fell to the ground, unmoving. By now, my fellow soldiers had finished reloading, and so I ejected my magazine and slid a new one in its place.
I pinched my thumb. Ow.
Ow. It got infected and I died. The end.
All of me and my entire team got infected from trying to load the same gun.
And I am writing this just before the sepsis kicks in. Goodbye. We were still for some time, waiting for the returning fire. When it never came, Ivan came up to a crouch and quietly walked over to the corpse. He felt the pulse and then returned to us. Yes, we got him, he said. In his eyes I saw something I hadn't seen before, a kind of deep sadness and regret. No matter how I pushed, he would not tell me why. Because you just fucking killed somebody. I mean, it's sad. It's still war, but it's sad. Ivan knocked on the door. We waited a moment, and Ivan firmly planted his foot on the floor, rearing to kick the door down, when a shotgun blast blew through the door. Ivan fell to the ground, riddled with buckshot. We returned fire through the door, then swiftly beat it down with the stocks of our rifles. Inside, broken glass littered the floor, and bullet holes scattered along the walls. On the ground was a young woman, shot fatally 4 times. Can't you really only be shot fatally once?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, because you don't, to be fair, you don't know which bullet was the first fatal one.
Yeah, well, but still, only one is fatal. The rest were superfluous or not fatal.
Yeah, but you know, maybe that's not true. Maybe 2 of the shots went like one on top of the other. You know,
it's true. It like almost pierced her heart, and I'm still. And then the second one pushed it all the way through.
Like,
it's
one
fuck.
bullet, like, you know, the doctor would have been like, it's 50-50 if they're going to make it, and then the other one just sealed the deal.
Yeah, but we're talking 4, so it was like 0.25% each.
Yeah, you know. Point being, always quadruple tap your target.
In her hands was the shotgun that killed Ivan. We had had more than enough of this village. We ransacked the house, throwing over tables and filling our pockets with valuables. When we had finished, we threw the gas lamps onto the floor and tossed matches onto the pooling liquid. We left the house on fire.
I know it was a common thing in like pretty much every war that's ever been, of like, you know,
and still going on,
looting houses. Yeah, it's still happening today. But there's got to be nothing dumber feeling than like loading up your shitty cargo pants pockets full of just the dumb shit you found
in a random house
while you're invading, and then you get shot and you're bleeding out with all this fucking, and you're jingling like keys as you fall to the earth. Like,
well, and I'm wondering, like, at home in war-torn, World War II Europe, how much valuables does it really?
I'm just
like,
saying,
what are you taking?
Like, you get shot and you get blown back like Sonic the Hedgehog. Like all these rings come out of you and shit. You know, it's like, I don't know. There's no way the money's worth that much.
Yeah.
Well,
and where are you pawning this stuff? Because it's not like you're going back to the main hub between quests, like a video game. I don't know. But I mean, it happens. Like I say, I mean, it still happens.
Yeah, totally.
And I guess in fairness, too, we're being liberal with the term value. I mean, I could see if you're in war and you're out in the middle of nowhere and don't have supply, you know, looking for like cigarettes if you're a smoker. Or
oh, sure.
Food. Yeah, so maybe that's what they... Anyway. It was only once we were outside again that we heard the wailing. By then the flames had taken hold, and it was too late to re-enter the building. The mother had hidden her baby before turning to fight us, and we hadn't found it before torching the houses. The wails continued for just a few minutes before falling silent among the crackling flames. A man burst from a building down the street and sprinted towards us, screaming in German. Our translator gaped at him. When we raised our rifles, he held up his hand to stop us. The German man shoved past us and up to the burning building. He hesitated only briefly at the doorway before running through. He didn't come back out. By the time the fire had died, we couldn't see it anymore. What? Oh. I think they meant they had, like, moved on and whatever. The rest of our mission went by in silence. When we doubled back to where we came, we found people standing in the street staring at us. Some were angry, some were sad, but most just had a blank stare. I still see it in my nightmares. When we passed the house, I stopped. I announced to no one in particular that I had to take a leak. No one believed it, but it didn't matter. I stepped into the shell of the house we had destroyed. I love that part, because it's like, he knows he's making an excuse to, like, go into the house, but I like that the excuse is like, man, this horrible thing that we did to these people, I'm going to go pee on them.
I'm going to take a piss on them.
Well, there's a crowd outside, mind you, because
no, I don't give a shit. I just want to really shit here.
You know how I just said only some of the people are angry? Well, watch this, guys. Yeah. But I could get them all really mad. Anyway. I stepped into the shell of the house we had destroyed. There on the floor in the bedroom, I saw the skeleton of a man crushed under a wooden beam, the smaller collections of misshapen bones in his arms. In the yard, by the fence, I saw a little boy with a toy gun, dressed in an oversized uniform of a German soldier. I peed on him, too.
Fucking terrible idea, kid.
Yeah.
You're lucky that night, you just got peed on.
That night, we all had nightmares. The man, with his wild eyes, told each of us that he would be back for us, one after the other. The next day, we had laughed it off together. Because that's the thing you do after witnessing I mean, I get that it's war, and they shot at you first, but it is a bad... I mean, I couldn't imagine that feeling of being like, well, we burned this house down, fuck, there was a baby in there. Yeah. But then if you all had the exact same nightmare, being like, how weird is that? Like,
I mean, there is, like, you know, not
group PTSD.
There is a real element of, like, horrific, weird war shit happening, but because you're all experiencing it together, it's almost like this Twilight Zone mentality of, like, you just sort of embrace your new reality, and, like, it's easier to do when you have a group of everyone just being like, yeah, this is fucked up. Everything's fucked up about this.
Yeah, and I guess that's true. One of the things I remember learning about when I was in school with for the homicide stuff was that, like, they're like, yeah, just be aware that homicide investigators tend to have a certain sense of humor that most people don't appreciate, but it's really a coping mechanism because you're dealing with horrible shit. Like,
yeah, they should come on our show.
Yeah, they should.
That's the name of this game.
I can tell you the one that they told us is a lot of times if somebody gets murdered in the snow and there's like the blood pattern left, they call it a snow angel. But
yeah, that's not bad. I could do better.
Yeah. Anyway, so they all had the same nightmare. They laughed it off and threw themselves into their duty. They'd fought hard not to think about the screaming man and the wailing baby. One by one, as the years went by, we died, which is kind of how life works. Here, one of us fell from a tower we were constructing. There, an aggressive form of cancer suddenly appeared in the brain. Never obvious, but always suspicious to us because we knew. We all knew what was happening. When there were two of us, it's Eosif, I think. It's like Joseph, but I think Eosif and I, he had come to visit me. When he had knocked, I thought my time had come, but I should have known I'd be the last. I don't know why. He's coming for me, Eosif said. It's my time now. I would have liked to console him, to assure him that it was all coincidence, but we both knew better. That night, Eosif cried on my shoulder and I on his. I'm so sorry, he had sobbed. I didn't know. The next day, he shot himself in his apartment. That was 1 week ago, and now it's my turn. I know he's coming. Every night in my sleep, he gazes into my eyes and smiles. Every night, he smiles wider. Last night, he began to speak. Quietly, so quiet I cannot hear any of what he says, other than to make out that he is speaking. I don't want to hear what he has to say. I cannot sleep tonight. I will stay up as late as possible, and before I sleep, I will climb on the roof and stand on the edge. I must. I cannot know what he will say. The shot at us, the woman killed Ivan. We couldn't have known about the baby. We were just eliminating the resistance, that's all. We were only following orders. Only following orders. The end.
I mean, that's a very weird story. Like,
yeah, what I like about it is that it touches on, and one of the comments was like, oh, what I like is so creepy about it is there's no supernatural element. I'm like, well, yeah, there is. They're being hunted down. In
they
their
basically
dreams
got a mummy's curse.
But what I like about it is
you
could interpret it as like PTSD and,
Yeah.
And I did think that it was an interesting situation. And we've talked about it because it's not a unrealistic one. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled it from an account of a soldier during any given war. That whole thought, and we've talked about this a lot too. In war, you say, oh, the good guys, the Allies, the good guys, and the Axis were the bad guys. It's like, yeah, but they both did a lot of horrific shit.
Well, war is a horrific fucking invention. That's kind of why I'm a little weird. I'm a little bit uncertain about this one because it leans really hard into the we were only following orders thing, which is commonly thrown at Nazis because that was the
that was the excuse a lot of
that was the excuse of all their fucking evil. And there is some truth to, both sides of a war execute evil. What they did was not, at least the way it came across in the story, it was like, well, that's you were in combat, you had to fight back.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the one thing.
So it's like,
but you could also interpret that as a point of perspective. Like these locals that saw it would be like, you just burned a baby alive. Yeah. And then, but from their point of view, I think it does do an interesting job showing the grayness and terribleness of war. Because in a court of war or whatever, if they were court-martialed or whatever, I think you'd be said no. Your actions were.
I think that's the thing of you changed the group of people it was happening to. Obviously there were, German casualties. They weren't during that war. There weren't soldiers, and they got fucked up and didn't deserve it. Because, like I said, war is awful. But there is something to say about it makes it really hard to be sympathetic to Nazi Germany, as you're as the other to your protagonist,
Yeah.
Not saying that this isn't criticism. It's more just commentary on kind of like you said, the gray area of what the story's touching on, which makes you feel really conflicted about it. Because it's I'm not happy a kid died, but, they were at war with Nazis. What the fuck?
Yeah, and they didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, it was a combat situation.
Like if you wanted to change the flavor a little bit, you could have like whoever ordered him to burn it down, like they start to hear the wailing, and he says something like "good one less," or like reveal that he knew the baby was there, and you became an unwitting.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting about it is it's a group of soldiers who, and that's the one knock, not really a knock, but just like leaning into that specific line of, just following orders. It's like, it wasn't even like direct orders to like kill the baby, it was, it's the orders every soldier has in a combat scenario, which is survive.
But then to get back into the gray area too, there's not really a tactical need to burn the house down. That was clearly out of like an anger response to your captain just getting killed by these people. Yeah.
Which
like
which is also the other part of it all is like the human reality of you basically put men into that headspace of fight or die, and if they kill your the only friends you might ever have left if you don't survive this conflict, those guys are going to be the last people and if they die, you take that like you just lost your fucking brother, and it's weird because war and battle is one of the oldest man-made things, and I would argue we're not cut out for it. That's the oddest thing is like we are just not mentally and emotionally built to handle that kind of strain, which would be a good thing if our elected leaders understood that too. But,
well, it's the one thing that is just inherently driven by raw and like the strongest, purest emotions. And when we act by nothing but emotion, we rarely act prudently. Yeah.
I don't know.
And then that said, I say the people on the ground doing the damage are acting on emotion. The people pulling the strings of the puppet are usually acting out of greed and self-interest. But I don't know. Breaking news, if you're not aware already, war is shitty. We've just, I think we've come to that conclusion here tonight. And maybe we can bring it to the UN tomorrow and we'll change be like, hey guys, by the way.
My findings,
based on this creepypasta that we read.
Research over 2 weeks of, putting it off and finding a story last minute.
Based on this one. I
have dissected the human condition.
I admit the story was completely fictional. However, it led us to the real conclusion. The war is bad. Yeah. Just want to make sure y'all knew that. We were trying to share the message.
Yeah. I think in that framing, though, of like, whether you're justified, unjustified, it really doesn't matter because, or like justified is maybe the wrong word, but like somewhat defensible. Given the circumstances, like that doesn't really matter in the context of PTSD because how many soldiers have stories of like shit they did that we would all have probably done the same thing.
Yeah, I mean,
if not something worse, but they're still fucked up about it,
Well, and even when it's 100% not. So the common one, I read a lot back in high school about the Vietnam War and how, one of the common tactics by the Viet Cong was to just strap explosives to children and to have them walk towards soldiers. When that's playing off the, like, nobody wants to fucking kill, nobody. Most of us don't want to kill a child, especially when they're loaded with explosives. They're not generally willingly doing it, or if they are, they've been they don't understand the consequences of this. And so, I mean, they're out there by the hundreds of stories of these soldiers that shot and killed these kids to keep them from coming into camp and blowing everybody up, including the kid himself. The kid would have died anyway. And they live the rest of their lives with this intolerable guilt. because you
like
still
you can't do. Yeah, you can't.
So
do
yeah,
anything.
like you said, justified or not doesn't often change. I mean, it can. I mean, there are people that are very good at like, look, I did what I had to do. But we're all wired differently, and for a lot of us, that's not enough justification to deal with, like, to reconcile the fact that we murdered somebody.
Yeah.
But that's what I thought it was an interesting story because it kind of touches on some real themes of war, and then the kind of cliche, but I don't hate it, like trope of like the one by one being like tracked down in your dreams, like Freddy Krueger style.
Mm-hmm. Instead, he just gives you fucking cancer.
Yeah, well, that's interesting that like 3 of the ones that were described sounded like they could, because the ones like fell from a tower, but given the other 2, it's like maybe he jumped. But then the one's like, oh, this guy's he's too I've tried to get him to kill himself for 3 years. I'm just gonna fucking give him cancer. Like,
which I'd be kind of pissed. It's like you playing chess with somebody and they just pull a gun on you. You know?
Well, that tells us which one of these.
I've been fighting you off this whole time, you asshole.
It tells us which one of these guys in the squad could live with the guilt. He was like, "Yeah, I'm not sorry. We did what we had to do."
Just one evil son of a bitch. He's like, "Oh yeah, I just smoked too much."
Yeah.
No, I haven't thought about it since it happened. Sorry, guys.
What do you mean you haven't? I haunt you every night. It's like,
Nah, I mean, I had the dream, but I kind of told him to fuck off, and he did.
Yeah. You peed on him.
I peed on him. Just like the worst fucking. Just like no emotional depth from that guy in your squad. He was like, oh, he just.
Yeah. So, like I said, after years, the ghost was just like, God damn it. I can't get this guy. I had cancer. Brain cancer. Stop.
Yeah, Private Igor, he didn't give a fuck.
It was interesting to me, and I guess that I don't know the nationality of the writer, like them being a Soviet. See, I'm kind of guessing that it's like that they're not a writer of that, like that area or descent, because the like 2 names mentioned were like the most cliche,
Ivan and
like
Yusuf.
Yeah.
That's fine though. I mean, it's like if you want to tell a story about like an invasion portion of a war, but you don't want to do like a more modern one, you kind of have to like, that's kind of the big one everybody knows is like, you know, as Russia kind of pushed into Berlin and shit.
Yeah.
So I can't fault them for that.
Wait, Russia fought in World War II?
No.
I didn't know that. Huh.
No.
Did they play a big role or not? I don't know.
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, we gave them the scraps. You know?
I guess if you were making like a movie or a video, it would probably work a little better. I don't know. As Americans, we're good at imagining ourselves in the best like light, but the most like emotionally angry, like violent, really the Soviets and the German, because of the atrocities from both sides against each other, because of that hate. And like you said, if you want to use the term justified, like it was all built off of reasons. It wasn't just like, oh, fuck you, you're German, fuck you, you're Soviet. Like, but yeah, I mean, that also plays into that, like, we don't feel bad about burning this random house down because fuck these Germans. And
so, like, you know, I'm going to reveal how fucking idiotic I am, but I'm not like, you know, some World War II scholar really. Like, I tend to think about, like, I am into history, but I tend to think about war and learn about it. Like, I think about the causes and I think about the aftermath, because the war
and what
is
kind of video games you can make off of it.
Yes, and that's where I'm going with this, actually. Yeah. But, like, you know, I was talking to my friend the other day about, like, Call of Duty, and what Call of Duty is now is a very frantic, arcadey, like, just unrecognizable to what it was.
It's a competitive Twitch shooter. I mean, it's it
is video game the video game. Like, if there are characters
playing, best way to put it.
Characters in a show playing a video game, that video game is pretending to be Call of Duty.
Right.
But what it used to be was like the most fucking intense World War II simulator ever, that it was like almost troubling.
Yeah.
And, like there was no, you didn't have Snoop Dogg popping up in it and shit. You had a sniper take you out, and then Winston Churchill would be like, "No, that looked bad," and that's like his quote, you know. And then he had to get right back in it. And I remember specifically the Russia stuff, because you would jump around. You would play a little bit as American, a little bit as like British, and a little bit as Russian. And the Russian portion was always so fucking intense and scary to me. You know, because the portion of that game was actually when the Germans were trying to push into Russia. And that is, historically, if you don't know anything about it, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's what added to, like, not that any of the fronts were like the good front to be on, but what made that so particularly unique was that not only did you have, it was highly mechanized, a lot of tanks and shit, and, you know, big cities, big population areas being invaded, but the environment of Russia added like a second enemy to both sides, because it really, I mean, if it hurt anybody more than the other, it hurt Germany more than Russia, but it wasn't good for, I mean...
Yeah, it's not good for anybody, but Russia historically, and you can look at like Napoleon and shit too, like they are the definition of home field advantage.
Right.
In war. Like, you know, because it's like, yeah, it's bad, but they fucking trained in that crap. You
well,
know,
not only that, but like you said, a lot of it is they're being invaded, and a lot of the problem is you get a shitload of snow, for instance. It's hard to move. Well, if you're entrenched defending, you don't need to move that much. If you're invading, you're fucked.
and it's actually a truth that, in general, like, it is really hard to invade another country.
Yeah.
You know, America sure as shit knows that by now.
No, we should know it.
We should,
if we do know it, we don't show that we know it. Right.
Again, I wish our elected officials understood these things. But, you know, like, you know, the push into like Germany at the end of World War II, like, what I do know about that war, that could only happen after some real fucking crippling losses.
Yeah.
And it still wasn't like a squeaky clean, you know, and then we marched into Germany and everything was fine. It's like, it's fucking tough.
Yeah, my understanding. And again, I'm no World War II scholar by any means. It's just we grew up in an era between, I think everybody goes through a World War II phase where you're learning about it, and then the video game era. We both grew up in that era where like developers were like, wait, this is like the perfect setting for games that are just about shooting people.
Right.
But you occasionally learn stuff from them. But yeah, I mean, between the losses and the fact that it spread, what it seemed to do is it just spread Germany just thin enough that they collapsed from all sides. But like not... But barely. It just tipped it enough.
Yeah, like I said, it was like you had to lose a lot of key battles for that to happen, and you know.
And also, I think it helped that,
like, you know, on the Japan end, where it's like, you know, you see the other side of it, where it's like, well, we're not going to be able to fucking invade Japan, so what they do, they fucking dropped a bomb on them.
Yeah.
To basically shut it all down.
Which, again,
the morality, that's a whole nother topic. I'm just saying, like, they elected to do that because the alternative to winning that war would have been really hard, if not impossible. You know, and that's sort of where that's why that's an eternal debate among historians of, like, on the moral side, like, did they need to do that? Or, you know, could there have been another way? But
yeah, I know way less about the Pacific Front and Japan. It kind of feels like
It's so fucked up.
Yeah,
like,
well, it's funny because it's like we didn't necessarily
the
want
politics
to.
of it. It's so fucked up.
It wasn't like we were looking to necessarily evade Japan, but it feels like they just wouldn't stop.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. Like Japan was completely split internally because a lot of people were like, in the government were like, we lost. It's over, and we need to think about how we move forward now. And then there was another contingent that was like, Japan never surrenders. And maybe, and they also had these like loose hopes of like, maybe, these other nations will come in and help us. And so it just led to this stalemate and internally. And while that's happening, America's like, fuck it. It was really like, we're not waiting for you to decide.
We're tired of our ships being sunk.
We're going to make this decision for you in one of the most horrifying ways.
I kind of feel like they could have dropped the bomb off the coast of Japan just to show them, like, hey, we got this thing, and then maybe it would have still worked. But I don't know.
Maybe there's so many, like, especially with Oppenheimer, there's a lot of fucking resurgence of interest in the atomic bomb, and
that's the thing is I kind of feel like I'm sure there was a contingent of people in the United States that were like, let's just see what this actually does. Like they were kind of itching to.
I genuinely think there was a little bit of that of like, we have a new toy, I want to use it.
Yeah, and there's always that because there's always people that because we see it to this fucking day, this nationalism, like let's go show them why we don't fuck with America. It's like let's not kill thousands of people.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't know. I wish that like
nobody consulted me, but
I wish we had like a PUBG setup where we just dropped our fucking leaders onto an island with guns.
Yeah, let them fight it out.
And it's like, if you really want this war, that's where it is. Get that chicken dinner, buddy. And then it wouldn't be our fucking problem.
Yeah, we live in a world where we don't like kill civilians. Your country just gets relegated. Like,
thing is, though, we elect such old shitheads that,
Yeah, although unfair.
Like in a real, like, battle of the fittest, America, like, our leaders aren't winning that. Like, well, we have some great fighters, but there's not one motherfucker who's been like, we need to go to war, who would be dropped in a PUBG situation and wouldn't, like, they would be the ones who, like, die immediately by getting punched.
Well, or they just break their hip on the parachute in because all of our leaders are like 80, but
yeah. But, I'm just saying that's my idea. We could take out the whole electoral college thing. All the political systems, we could just lose all that shit.
I mean, it would also solve this thing with the same boring motherfuckers running all over it. Because if you lose your dad, you're gone.
That's the thing. Yeah. I want to know who really wants it. Who like. I want elections solved this way now, because it's like there's so many fucking politicians who run who you just feel the entitlement oozing off them, like they knew they were going to be president at some point, and it's like, go fucking get that job, pal.
They flat out admit it. I mean, that's what I don't want to be specifically political on this, although our official political stance is pretty clearly
I hate
Trump,
it here,
but. Yeah, but that's the thing with Biden, and Biden being picked again as well, he deserves it, he earned it. I'm like, that's not a thing. That's not how that works.
No, it's about, there's 4 more years in front of us. Who's gonna do it? Who's gonna do it best?
Right.
And I feel like we haven't had one good answer to that question.
Well,
in a long time.
Well, but my opinion on that is because, and we've talked about this before, and there's other jobs that have the same problem. the kind of people who want it bad enough to play the kind of games that you need to play to get it are just the exact wrong kind of people.
People to be in charge of a lot of shit.
Yeah, and the kind of people that should be in charge are the kind that are just like, fuck that, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. It's the worst job in the world, and if you want it, you're weird.
I hadn't heard this joke before. It came up on a podcast I was listening to. But it's from back when Barack got elected the first time. The Onion ran a article that its headline was something like, black man finally gets the worst job in America.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the show. Tired of talking now. Gonna go away. We'll come back another time with another thing. Keep talking. I promise like this.
I will also remember that it's time to record within 24 hours of time to record.
but that's just wasted energy.
Right. And I don't have energy to spare. I just don't.
No. I'm pounding back tequila shots with my boy Gumpf.
I've got tequila. Maybe I'll bring it next time. Anyway.
All right. See you next time.
Bye-bye.